symptoms and you can't see the cancer.
Yeah.
So when you have cancer, you are symptomatic, but you can't see the cancer. It takes a really close look, a really close inspection by talented, knowledgeable people to identify the cancer cells. We finally have a few people who are talented and knowledgeable who are telling us they see the cancer cells, and we're like, I don't see no stinking cancer. I'm just going to keep drinking and smoking and going on with my life.
All right, last question. So what do you suggest people do at this point? Like, assuming for the moment that you're right, and God knows I hope that you're completely wrong on this, and I suspect you hope that you're wrong on this too.
Absolutely. You know, for many reasons. One, the timeline that I'm thinking about, I'm going to die too. I'm not even going to qualify for Social Security, which I think is a joke anyway. And so I don't want to die, and I certainly don't want every other species on the planet to die when humans die, and therefore the nuclear power facilities melt down catastrophically and strip away the atmosphere, and bam, we're all gone. No, I don't want any of that to happen. And perhaps most importantly for the average listener, there's no money in extinction. If you could spend one day getting the hate mail I get, you might have some idea of what I've been up against for the last 20 years. I don't want any of what I'm talking about to come true. I don't want to die individually. I don't want the, quote, world to end. I don't want our species to go extinct. What to do? The same thing I've been saying for years. Live beyond the limits of this incredibly restrictive culture. More fully than you can possibly imagine. Be you. All the other jobs are taken, man. Be you in...
Messy writing can cost you a lot. Grammarly
in a more full, complete manner than you can possibly imagine. Be real. Complete those relationships in your life. Treat every goodbye as if it's the last goodbye, because one of these times it will be. One of these times, live large, be bold, live like you're dying, because you are.
What you said, because you are, yeah. I mean, we're not going to be on this earth. I mean, one of the oddities is, we're not going to live forever anyway, to some degree. At some point, you're always going to have to confront that particular reality of it seems like I'm going to be here forever, but my mentality is going to be tested at some point. Okay, one more question. I'm sorry, I lied.
Well, and not only that, Jamaro, if I can interrupt, not only that, but every species goes extinct. There have been 6 previous species in the genus Homo, our species, Homo sapiens, 6 previous species in the genus Homo, all of them have gone extinct. And I'll bet there were a few members of each one of those species who thought, it won't happen to us. We're too clever for that.
Far too young and clever. There's a Star Trek episode. I always have these Star Trek allegories. On Star Trek, the human species got to the point, it advanced in technology and everything else, but it didn't become rational until the species was extinct, was at risk. And the planet acknowledged and recognized, oh my God, we're going to kill ourselves. We need to change. We need to do something else. And I had this thing in the back of my head that maybe, maybe we become that rational species that says, oh my God, the planet is at risk. We need to put all these petty grievances to the side. We need to treat each other like rational human beings. We need to get rid of poverty. We need to, I want my flying car. And we need to do this in a way that lives within our means, within the habitable space of our means. Fuck this capitalism stuff. We need to live within our means. And I hope that, even though I didn't necessarily know how that was going to take place. Yeah, I mean, this is just a brutal wake-up call. And like you say, you live like your life is ending, because to some degree your life is ending. What does it look like? So it's not a flash of glory. And this is the last question for real. What does this idea that at some point you are going to take an L, but what does it look like in real terms from the standpoint of an individual that's living their lives? A person, let's say, living in America, let's say living in Kansas. What does it look like to them to take an L through this type of scenario? Because I would imagine that hurricanes, floods, droughts, famines, refugee crisis. I would imagine that all of these things, this societal destabilization, just from the standpoint of the way we go about affairs, what does it look like? Oh, sound.
A lot in middle America, in Kansas, in a town or a small city, I suspect when civilization fails, and it will do so for most people without any warning at all, because of the inability to grow grains at scale, the lights will go out, they won't come back on, the water will stop coming through the taps. I suspect a lot of people will die from dehydration. Others who have managed to secure their water supply will die from starvation, because in the wake of the sixth mass extinction, where we're losing plant and animal life at an astonishingly rapid rate, we aren't going to have the bread. Every civilization needs bread and circuses to persist. Yeah. We're going to have circuses, I promise, until the bitter end. Right. But the bread is going to go away when we can no longer grow grains at scale. The wheat productivity this year is down from last year. That rarely happens, and it's a pretty significant decline compared to last year. At what point does it become too hot in the interior of large continents where all the grains are grown? When does it become too hot to grow a significant amount of grains at all? And so we don't have the bread and we don't have the corn that in America means no high fructose corn syrup, which is in almost every single food item. So when is there no food on the shelves? I don't know, but I don't think it's far off. So in the absence of water and food, obviously industrial activity is going to crater, and it's going to get hotter and hotter as time goes by. Dehydration, starvation, I suspect people will resort to violence, as we're already seeing signs of. We're going to see refugees that are detested in the places where they're coming to. Yeah. And so that's going to create a lot of civil unrest, continuing civil unrest. And we're going to see the kinds of things we've been seeing every day. How many weeks can we look back and there hasn't been a large-scale shooting in the United States? It's every week now that somebody goes out there and loses their mind and starts shooting a bunch of people. That, Garrett Hardin warned about this in the 1960s when he was talking about too many people on too small a planet. Yeah. And we're starting to see the signs now. We're experiencing this enormous economic contraction. So people are losing their jobs. They're losing the ability to feed their children. They're losing the ability to feed themselves. They're staying in a flop house. People's lives are falling apart already. That's all going to be exacerbated into the future and accelerated.
Sorry.
So again, I return to my central message about how we live and trying to live fully with the time that we have, because now is what we have.
The sad part about this is we don't have, it's not a diminishing thing of resources. It's how we use it, if that makes sense. Like if society decided, like at this point, war, poverty, all those things are choices. We have technological acumen where we could live differently. Jeff Bezos has $150 billion. The $150 billion is not necessarily real within the grand scheme of things. It's only real within the capitalistic system. And that money that can be used to make sure people have clothing and food and housing and everything else is sitting in Jeff Bezos's bank account, not being used to the betterment of humanity, just being used for Jeff Bezos's, getting golden toilets and all this other nonsense. The aggravating part to that is we have the ability to change this world. I mean, we may say not necessarily enough time at this point, but the potential was there. Like not necessarily a utopian existence, but humanity could have lived within its means. So for example, like growing food. Humanity can grow food within, if we wanted to, if humanity put the muscle and mental energy behind it, in the warehouses, growing food in those warehouses, automate the processes where you can grow food in with lack or less human labor on floors in these high-rise buildings, having plant material all the way down and giving that food or selling that food for dirt cheap. We don't do it. It's not even considered. Even the solar energy thing. Like this idea of having a centralized solar power thing or solar or energy production purely so somebody can make a buck off of it, as opposed to saying, let's make sure that each house is an energy thing unto itself where it's solar powered or something to that effect that doesn't necessarily require carbon in order to do it. We have the skill. We just don't do it. I think that's the most aggravating part of all of this. We consider ourselves rational human beings. And it's a rational human beings like the species that essentially ending our existence on this earth.
And I did all that. I voluntarily left a very privileged position as a tenured full professor at a major university, and I led the way. I walked away from this imperial set of living arrangements. I started growing enough food for me and several other people and living off grid, and I did that for about 10 years, and not 3 people followed.
Yeah.
Not 3. And I threw everything I had at it. I've been living without a paycheck for 9.5 years now. And I just don't see anybody. And this is not a poor me story. It's an example of how, yes, we could have done that if we had grown organic food at a small scale. And it would only take 1 out of every 5 or 10 people to do that for everybody. Yeah. Had we done that at the appropriate time, and we don't even know when that time was it 10 years ago? Was it 20 years ago? Was it 100 years ago? I don't know. But it's too late now because we've triggered these self-reinforcing feedback loops. And we didn't. There was no call for us to do that because that is not where the money is. And we are so afflicted with this monetary paradigm, and it's an affliction.
I call it a religious belief.
Yes.
But it's like, this idea that you're worshiping. My wife and I was at the store the other day. We were at a mall. And it's like you look around, it's like all of these people are worshiping at this altar. like literally, like going to get this or going to get that. And sometimes even me, like we have like all of these pair of Converse. I for the first time in my life, I bought a pair of non-name brand shoes. First time. And I realized from the time I was a kid, it was drilled into me just based on social pressures, Nike, Adidas, Fila, Reebok. Not necessarily that they're better than the non-name brand shoes, but it was drilled into you like, it gets you at such a young age that it has you for the rest of your life. And it's like, if I can't even break away from that, like that, it's hard. Like it took everything in me to buy that pair of shoes because I need it for the next place. But it was based on a need. We've fucked up. Like honestly, and that's such a massive understatement. like that's an understatement of a lifetime. I don't like to accept this thing of defeat, so I'm not.
No. And so that's why I say repeatedly, do what you can, do the right thing, take the right action, don't be attached to the outcome because it is almost certainly going to go bad regardless. But that doesn't mean you should become an indecent person.
No.
It doesn't mean that you should do what the Trump administration has done, which is deny, and then, oh, too late, we're screwed, pedal to the metal.
Yeah. Agreed. Guy, I always appreciate you on the channel. I wish the message could be more upbeat, but I don't necessarily have this fascination with hope.